Bread and circuses. It's a phrase from ancient Rome that still echoes in our stadiums, arenas, and screens today. The Roman emperors understood the power of distraction, how feeding the masses and entertaining them could pacify the restless, keep them loyal, keep them silent. Today, well, the bread has changed. It comes in hot dogs, energy drinks, and viral highlight reels. And the circuses? High-definition screens, celebrity athletes, and meticulously choreographed narratives of glory and defeat. And yes, it's all scripted. We like to believe it's about skill, passion, and fair play. But behind the curtain, the game is often less about the sport than it is about the spectacle, the drama, and the stage. Welcome back to the Luminary Room. I'm your host Nico, the voice behind 369 Lumineer, and this is this week's 15-minute illumination, episode 19, Bread, Circuses and the Global Game. This session is a continuation of episode 7, where I explore the concept of bread and circuses in the ancient and modern world. This time, however, I'm going to take a more personal approach. I'm going to share the journey I undertook to ultimately have a 400-page book published on this very topic. A journey that exposed me not only to the spectacle of professional football, but to the broader machinery of global sport and the entertainment that keeps us all enthralled. But first, some context. The Latin phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses, was coined by the Roman poet Juvenal, which he composed in the late 1st or early 2nd century, in his critique of a society distracted by food and spectacle. His critique is specifically from his work Satire 10. He lamented how the masses gave up civic engagement, content with cheap food and spectacle. The ruling class answered by providing free grain and grand games, gladiators, chariot races, mock naval battles, and animal hunts. These spectacles were brutal, theatrical, and designed to mesmerise the crowd. And these events didn't just entertain, they were a distraction. They turned citizens, potential critics, and potential revolutionaries into spectators. By occupying their time, their hopes, their passions, the elite deflected attention away from political decay, inequality, and systemic rot. And during that time, the foundations of later financial instability were essentially being laid. The early 2nd century was a peak period for the Roman Empire, but imperial expansion and high military spending began to strain its finances, leading to currency debasement and the beginning of a long-term trend of economic erosion. But I digress. My point here is this: the ancient strategy didn't just vanish, it simply adapted. Today's circuses look different, but the purpose, distraction, pacification and control, remains. Stadiums replaced arenas, global broadcast replaced local crowds, and much like the Romans, today's rulers, in power, in government, in business, in media, know the value of keeping the masses entertained. When I wrote my article, Give Them Bread and Circuses and They Will Never Revolt, I argued that today's football, and indeed professional sports in general, is the modern Colosseum. Look at the global football calendar as evidence. Domestic leagues, international competitions, continental tournaments, friendlies, year-round, week after week. It's a perpetual cycle of games, rivalries, transfers, hype and heartbreak. For many, following a club becomes a lifestyle. Fandom becomes identity. Major tournaments like the FIFA World Cup and the UEFA Champions League don't just offer sport, they offer spectacle. There's that word again. They dominate media cycles for months, command billions in broadcasting and marketing revenue, propel merchandise sales, and fuel global narratives of belonging, rivalry, hope and despair. Stadiums that hold 80,000, 100,000, 130,000 spectators. They're modern day arenas. The fans are not just watching a game, they're participating in a ritual of distraction. A ritual that suspends reality, that demands allegiance, that consumes time, attention, money, emotion and energy. The modern day emperors of profit sit above it all, just as the Caesars once did, counting the bodies in the arenas and smiling at how easily the crowds still serve their purpose. Global sports events, annual leagues, merchandise, broadcast deals, they knit together a massive ecosystem built not just on athletic competition, but on emotional investment, consumer behaviour, and identity formation. If we dig beneath the surface, clubs are no longer rooted in local communities first. For many, they're businesses. Profit often trumps sporting pride. In my written article, I explored how some of the richest clubs prize revenue, brand, and global reach over trophies or local loyalty. The shift reveals itself in player types too. Where once grace, creativity, technical brilliance were celebrated, today the pendulum swings towards athletic extremes: speed, strength, physicality. Skill remains, but it's often subordinate to athleticism. The game becomes less beautiful and more a gladiator spectacle. This transformation reflects how the football industry values entertainment, revenue, global reach, not artistry or the local roots of a club. Youth development, community identity, tactical evolution, all risk being overshadowed by marketing, branding, and global commodity thinking. And mind you, football is only the largest example I'm giving. Other major professional sports operate under the same logic. In the US, NFL turns its seasons into cultural phenomena. The Super Bowl is part scripted sport, part spectacle. Halftime shows, celebrity appearances, commercials. It's packaged entertainment with addictive rhythms. Similarly, NBA offers non-stop scripted entertainment, big trades, star rivalries, global marketing, off-court drama. Even recent reports of infiltration by mafia-driven illegal betting rings into the NBA is a grim reminder that behind the glamour, dark forces can lurk. I mention this not because I want to sensationalise, but to show that the spectacle can be a cover for political interference, corruption, money laundering, manipulation, and organised crime. We see this repeatedly, and there are far more cases than a 15-minute elimination can cover. And beyond that, well, we have tennis, their Grand Slams, motor racing, cycling tours, global athletics, all feed the appetite for spectacle. They engage communities worldwide. They absorb attention, time, and money. They carry narratives of heroism, failure, and triumph. They create emotional stakes. Yet often, these spectacles steer us away from critical questions. Questions about inequality, economic injustice, power concentration, exploitation, unchecked corporate influence, opaque ownership structures, and the extreme political agendas quietly woven into major sporting events. When writing the book Football for Sale, I began to realise how easily I'd been pulled into the same cycles I was analysing. Long hours, constant overstimulation, the pressure to keep producing rather than questioning. It took time to understand that I wasn't outside the system observing it, I was inside it. I was shaped by it. That realisation shifted everything. I started reading more critically. I started noticing how attention is captured, how narratives are softened, how discomfort is diverted. I also noticed how ordinary it is for people to accept this. We're all drawn in. No one is immune. Until you wake up, of course. That was the beginning of the project that eventually became the book I wrote with my colleague. It began as a private effort to make sense of what I was seeing. Notes, patterns, late-night reflections. Nothing structured, nothing intended for publication. Just an attempt to understand why the same dynamics kept appearing in politics, media, and culture. The deeper I went, the more I recognised echoes of the old Roman pattern. Bread and circuses wasn't an ancient problem frozen in history. It was a modern operating system, a way of managing unrest, a way of keeping people entertained enough not to look too closely. And that recognition carried a sense of responsibility. If I could see the pattern, I needed to explain it clearly, not to complain, not to lecture, but to trace the journey honestly so others could see what I saw. That's why the book exists. It grew out of that moment of clarity and the need to share the truth rather than stay comfortable in distraction. As fans, we cherish the drama, the goals, the last-minute showdowns. We feel part of something bigger. We invest emotionally, financially, and socially. And that investment creates identity, belonging, and memory. But being a spectator in this global sports industry doesn't have to mean being passive. Recognising the mechanics at work, the cycle of spectacle, profit, and distraction can liberate us. It allows us to appreciate the skill and passion of athletes while questioning the structures that profit from our attention. It allows us to demand transparency, accountability and fairness, not just on the pitch, but behind the scenes. If we accept modern professional sport as mere entertainment, we risk complacency. If we treat it as a sacred institution immune to critique, we facilitate the very mechanisms of distraction and control that once ruled ancient Rome. Understanding the concept of bread and circuses, the original and its modern incarnation in global sports, doesn't mean condemning every player, every match, every moment of joy. It means seeing the full picture. It means asking who profits, who controls the narrative, who benefits from our loyalty, our passion, our time, our money. I wrote this book for people who genuinely love football, people who follow it, breathe it and feel its pull. Football was the foundation because it's the clearest and largest example of how spectacle works. But the mechanics stretch across most, if not all, professional team sports. The same patterns, the same incentives, the same theatre dressed up as competition. In Football for Sale, I've tried to trace those questions. I invite you to take off the rose-tinted glasses and to see the spectacle not just as entertainment, but as industry, a global business behemoth, as social control, as global machinery. Professional sports are more than games. They're massive international industries with enormous financial influence. Now here's a fun fact as I sign off, which will hopefully keep you thinking beyond this episode. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, through the publication of its Global Report on Corruption in Sport, which was originally published in 2021, estimated that roughly $140 billion per year is laundered globally through professional sport. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. When you include illicit betting and other corrupt mechanisms linked to professional sports, some estimates go as high as $1.7 trillion worldwide. Let those figures settle. So next time you're cheering, following transfers, or swept up in the drama on screen, remember, the spectacle you see is only part of the story. Behind the glamour, the sport you love is embedded in a vast global financial machine. A system that entertains, yes, but also shapes economies, influences decisions, and quietly channels trillions of dollars through unseen corridors of power. All of this reminds us that, just like in ancient Rome, the spectacle keeps us entertained, engaged, and distracted, while the machinery behind the games quietly carries on. If this illumination session has made you question the narratives behind the games you watch, help spread the light, share it, discuss it, and look more closely the next time you cheer for the spectacle. You can also read more about the book Football for Sale. You'll find the link to the official website in the summary notes, together with the link to my written article on this topic. It's free and no subscription required. So until next time, I encourage you to watch critically, question openly, and enjoy the games with awareness. As always, stay curious, stay critical, and stay aware. This is Nico, signing off.